Welcome back. Today on Expert Showcase, we have Jim Kellner, and we're going to be talking in this segment, in the Expert Focus segment, about creating the future with the power of your mind. And for those of you who watched the beginning, who watched the hero's journey, you'll know that Jim's gone through a lot of struggle and strife in his life, and he's definitely the person to help you create the future with the power of your mind. And for those of you keeping track, the cough counter is at 3. If you don't know what we're talking about, you got to go back to the beginning and watch the beginning of the show and figure it out. It'll be worth your while. So anyway, Jim, let's dive right in. Before we go into the 3 bullet points and each of the individual keys to success we're going to talk about today, I want to give our audience a quick overview about this topic and the subject of creating the future with the power of your mind.
Yeah, it's people maybe have trouble understanding this idea that you can really create your future with your mind. But if you think about it, how did any building get built? How did a bridge get built? Somebody had to see it in their mind first. You don't just a bridge doesn't just happen. A building doesn't just happen. And so when you start to create the life that you want in your mind, and maybe you put it out on paper, or maybe you don't, whatever you want to do, I think that's really the key to getting where you want to be.
Epic. And then today we're going to talk about specifically, we're going to start imagining, we're going to reframe our occurrences, and then just make the call. So let's dive into each one of those individually, and let's start off with start imagining. What are we talking about here?
Well, I think one of the great things too is I think that people talk about goal boards a lot, and I think those are a great idea. I know I made myself one, and just seeing visual images is fantastic for your mind, conscious and as well as your unconscious mind. And so, I mean, I put up a goal board, and within the year, it was crazy because so many things had happened that were on that goal board that I hadn't even consciously focused on. And so that's one part of it. But the other part is, now I use hypnosis. So when I'm doing hypnosis for myself or for someone else, I have them imagine that future that they want, that life. And one of the things I love this, one of my clients recently said, he said, I could see the apartment building in my mind, and it gets you fired up, gets you excited about it, and it gives you some direction, I think. And because the unconscious mind really it operates a lot in visual imagery, it's really powerful. It's a very powerful tool for getting you to where you want to be. Now, you can also do this just by sitting and visualizing something. But again, we don't want to get in this place where all we're doing is visualizing. And I think one of the problems with The Secret is that people missed in the movie The Secret and things like that is it's that action part. You can't just sit and visualize all that. You actually do have to take some action. But the visualization is really a key component, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And so a couple of interesting things there. One, and I'm sure you talk about this in your talks and other things you do. Part of what you're doing is you're activating your RAS, or your reticular activation system. So you're actually there. Your brain is looking for and expecting these things. It's kind of like, when you go to buy a new car, and you buy this brand new red whatever. And I've learned from a previous video that if I mention a product in here, I'll get spanked by YouTube, which was really bizarre. Complete another topic. I mean, we'll talk about that offline, but that's besides the point. So you go out and buy a red car, and you swear before you bought that red car, nobody in the world had that color red in that same car. And then you drive off the lot, and then everybody all of a sudden has that color car, and that same color and that same car. So, it works to really clue your mind in on what to look for. The other thing, I've done vision boards for a long time. And one of the things I did was when I moved into one of my houses, was I basically created a vision board for everything that we were going to get for the house over time. And the interesting thing that did was when extra money came up, or when something happened, it also gave me something to look to, and instead of going ahead and spending it, maybe on an impulse buy, it was, okay, let's look at the vision board. What did we say we want? Is this stuff we still want? And if it is, okay, here you go. Now we're going to go ahead and obtain it. And it works the same way with with success. It helps to keep you on track, right?
Mhm. Absolutely.
And
And it
that's
reminds
go
you.
ahead.
And it reminds you. It reminds you of what's important, which you just talked about. And that it works the same way with your mind. If you're just kind of visualizing it all the time or seeing it in hypnosis, it reminds you of what's important. And so you're not distracted by, oh, I really want to watch TV, but you go, oh yeah, but what's more important?
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because I think that's the other key is as you were just saying, it reminds you of what's important and it keeps you on track and allows you to progress forward and it gives you, as I call it, a touchstone to compare your activities against to make sure any activities you're taking are important and are going to push you forward, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. And I also love what you said about the fact that, with imaging only goes so far. It's kind of like the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So you can imagine your success all day long, but if you don't take action on it, then it's not going to happen, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So when you work with somebody who might come because we're talking about imaging, you mentioned the movie The Secret. One of my mentors, Paul Martinelli, was in the movie, and one of the things a lot of people talk about nowadays is the law of attraction. So when people come to you and say, "Look, I've been trying this imaging stuff, and I'm a student of the law of attraction, and nothing has happened," how do you deal with that, and what do you ask them? What's the first thing you ask them to do?
I asked them, what action have you taken? Because I talk to people, sometimes, I know people out there that have watched The Secret 50 times and they brag about it. I watched The Secret every week for 6 months or something. Or I've read the book and I've read spend that time doing something, people. That the movie is to help you to become aware of that law of the universe. It's not meant to teach you anything really more than that. I don't think. To me, it's really to get that thought across to you that you are in control and that whatever you focus on in life expands. And and it's that action part. I think somebody needs to do the secret part too.
Yeah, I think John Ashcraft was had just done something else. I think it was him that just came out with another kind of like kind of like what was, it's like, okay, I believe, I helped with the original Secret, and here's what's kind of wrong, and here's what we have to do different now. And I think that talks more about action, if I'm not mistaken. I could be completely wrong. I'm completely misreading these 7,000 promotional emails he sent out over the. I'm not busting on John. It's okay, John. I'm not. You're good. You're good at marketing. You're taking action. Well, that's the whole thing. He
Right,
wants
take
more.
action. Right.
He wants more people to join the neuro gym and everything else. So he's taking action. The other thing, here's a question for you. When you find people struggle to imagine things and struggle to hold that image, do you find that it's more often that they're imagining the wrong thing, meaning that they're imagining something that isn't right for their life, or do you find it's something that they're just people who don't have this imaginative capability and they just can't implement the imagining phase of this?
That's a great point. People imagine in different ways, and for some people, they'll be very visual, and so they can get a really good visual image. They can tell you all the details and everything. For some people, it's a little more cloudy. Mine is sort of cloudy. It's not real. It's not real vivid usually. And some people are going to be they're going to imagine sounds or feelings, and so whatever is helpful for them, and that's just based on how their learning style and that kind of thing. And so whatever works best for them. Although I do think the thing with imagination is the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it, just like everything else. But just practice. If you have trouble seeing that, when we talk about that, like maybe losing weight, that 50 pounds, what that's going to look like, what would it feel like? What would it feel like to be able to? And you can go through all the, what would it feel like to wake up in the morning, to walk across the room, to be able to go for a walk with your friends, those kind of things. And the other part is if you still can't imagine, pretend. It'll work the same. That's the other part. Just pretend.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's kind of like the same thing when people have dreams that feel that they're really real. Your brain
Exactly.
your brain in a lot of cases doesn't understand the difference between a dream and reality. It doesn't understand the difference between, the truth, the imagined truth, and just pretending. So, and it's interesting you bring up about the fact of how would it feel and what would it look like, because that really takes us into our next topic of reframing occurrences. Because I would think that if you would ask somebody how it would feel or what it would look like, they would make that determination based on their previous experience, not on the future, not on a valid picture of the future. Am I on base or off base there?
Absolutely. And I just want to say too, thank you so much for mentioning that about dreams, because if you don't believe that your imagination is powerful, have a scary dream and you wake up and looking around your room for something scary, right? That's only your imagination. There was nothing else going on. So your imagination is hugely powerful. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris.
You're welcome.
Right. And I got to tell you, my biggest thing in life right now, my thing that I really want to get across to people, well, it is the 5 minutes, but the other big thing is really you are creating what's around you by your thought, by what you're focusing on, and I think that's where the direction we're going for this next part.
Okay.
And it is colored by your emotions, by your experiences, by the way you kind of view the world, and you can change that. And that's and like Chris said, it's called reframing. And I'll tell you, having just gone through some major challenges and setbacks in my own life, I realize that sometimes the only silver lining is that things can't possibly get worse, and that's your reframe. And then you find out, no, they can get worse. but still, if that's all you can tell yourself, then go with that and say, well, probably things can't get any worse. So woohoo!
Yeah, until and I hate to say it that way, but until they do. I know I went through my own, as I call it, year from hell. I've talked about it on stage, and it was in the span of 10 months. My wife divorced me. I had a financial meltdown, lost everything, lost my birth mom to cancer, and lost my last adopted grandparent to an unforeseen stroke. So that was all in the span of 10 months. And every day you wake up and go, okay, this is now the worst it can get. Something else can come along. But I really like when you talk about reframing occurrences, because there's a video I just watched on testtube.com that talks about transference, and it's a topic I had heard about before, I'd studied before, but it's kind of ironic that based on our conversation today, I would have watched it just a day or two ago. And the idea of transference is the fact that you assume the way somebody's going to treat you based on what you saw as a child. So you're not really taking the current situation at face value and not really understanding how true the current situation, the current reactions, and everything is based on today's frame of reference. You're doing it based on something you might have seen as a child. In your studies, and when we're talking reframing occurrences, do you ever talk about that topic of transference, or is it does something go even further or different than that?
I haven't. I haven't really covered that before. No. No, I'm familiar with the term and what it means, but I've not. But I will tell you that I've experienced that myself. I still have a little bit of problem with this, but I recognize it, so I tried to change it. I have this maybe over reverence for authority figures, and so that kind of got me in trouble. I remember there was this comedy club in Seattle, close to Seattle, and I never actually wanted to talk to the club owners because I felt like I got to stay my distance. They're above me, and I don't want to do that. And actually, it cost me stage time. It really did, because this one club owner thought I didn't like him, and so then I thought he didn't like me, and then we with this vicious circle of neither one of us, because I won't talk to him because I have this reverence for him. And this other one, I remember he actually, this clubber said to me, because I would just walk in and just go over and sit and wait for my time to go on. And he goes, man, you never say anything. You're just here for the money. And I'm like, well, and really, I mean, you kind of are there just for the money because it's your job. But relationships are important. And if you're kind of too afraid, I guess, to talk to them because you think they don't want to be bothered, when really they expect to be bothered, I guess.
Yeah, well, or they like to interact. I know it's the
Yeah.
same way. It's challenging because it's the same way, I mean, I'm sure you experience this when you're on stage. I know I do as well. You get some people who come up and are, I'll say, disrespectful and just want to consume every second of your time. And that's okay because you want to help people. Then you have the people who are respectful and come up and interact and everything, but realize that there are 100 people waiting in line and everybody wants to talk. But then you've got the people who, like like you were just talking about, who won't come up to you and talk because they don't, they treat you as something different. And the worst part is those are the people who you really want to come up and talk, because those are the ones that really respect your time, and you want to get to know, you want to get to know everybody. And it's kind of, it's a shame when somebody, I've seen it happen a lot, where somebody will be sitting in the back of the room and they want to go talk to the speakers at an event, but they won't, because they treat them as they're somebody different. So for all those out there, you want to come up and talk to the speakers. Don't monopolize their time, but you want to come up and talk to them, because we're people
Look,
too.
I don't know. I mean, I love it. I mean, I want people to come up and say hi afterwards, right? I mean, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
there may be a couple of weirdos out there. I mean, I know there's this. No, I know there's this. I went to a stage hypnosis show, and the stage hypnotist didn't stick around. No, he left. It was over. But maybe, I mean, that's just me maybe transferring. Maybe he had something else he had to do, right? I mean, maybe he's got maybe he had diarrhea. Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm projecting onto him when I shouldn't do that. But really, I think most of us, we love attention, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if we're up there, we want people to come up and say hi. We also want to know if it moved them at all, right?
Yeah.
If you just kind of walk out, we're like, gosh, did they like it? Did they get anything out of it?
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking, I think everything we're talking about here is all about reframing occurrences. Just to make sure that I didn't take us off track and it wasn't a point you really wanted to make during this segment. Was there any point or anything you want our audience to know when it comes to reframing occurrences?
Well, the thing that I want you to understand is that um, okay. So here's the thing. So the whole world may be against you, but believing that the whole world is against you won't get you anywhere. And so I think it's just better. And I'll give you an example. I actually had I had a friend of mine. He emailed me and he said that he had just offered a homeless man who was standing outside of a Chipotle. He asked him if he could buy him a burrito for lunch. And the homeless guy said, "I'm too busy for that." And so, well, anyway, I don't make judgments, but I found it kind of amusing. And so I just put this on Facebook. I said, I told the story, no judgment. I didn't say, what I just, and I had a bunch of comments on it, and some, and this one girl ended up in the very end. She sent me a couple of very long emails and really complaining about my judgment and all this, and how I was a privileged white guy and everything, and clearly she didn't see my car that I was driving, but the thing is when I tried to explain to her, and I know her story. She was a homeless. She was homeless as a child prostitute. All kinds of horrible things that happened to her. But she's like in her 30s now, maybe 40s. And as long as you keep that kind of that mindset that the whole world's out to get you, you just can't go forward. You can't move forward because that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to and it's amazing the power of the mind. I'll tell you, I mean, I see this all the time with stage hypnosis shows, power of the mind, but I was even the things that I was standing right next to my one of my really good friends. I was going to officiate their wedding. I was standing right next to him. He looks right through me. He was the groom. Looks right through me 5 minutes before we go on. He goes, "Has anybody seen the reverend, the minister, Jim? Have you seen?" I'm standing right there. He looked right at me. That's how powerful it is. If you get in your mind that there is no opportunity out there. I was talking to a woman recently. She said, "Well, nobody in Phoenix is hiring." If you go on Craigslist, there are thousands of jobs on Craigslist.
Yeah.
So you're only going to see what you allow yourself to see.
Yeah.
I hope
And
that explained it. I don't know.
oh yeah, no, that, to kind of wrap this up, I think there were two big golden nuggets in here. One, when we're talking about reframing occurrences, what we're really talking about is things that have happened to you in the past. They might be terrible. They might be the worst thing in the world. You might have been homeless like me. You might have been bullied like me. You might have been overweight, like Jim. There might have been some terrible things that have happened to you. You have to go back and reframe them in a different way and not let them control the rest of your life. That's one thing. The second thing is things that happen to you today and going forward. You have to take a look at them, and you might have to change your frame of reference where you're coming from to understand what they mean and understand, and maybe treat them or treat the people that you're interacting with, a little bit differently in an effort to push your life forward. And the third thing, right there at the end, I heard was how powerful the mind is. That if you think things don't exist, you can, in some ways, make them not exist. So if you think that there are no opportunities, then you're going to not see any opportunities that are out there. Not that by thinking there are, you're going to see a million of them, but at least it opens you up to the possibility of seeing the opportunities and expecting an opportunity to come your way. And that really gets us into, when you go from expecting an opportunity to come your way into making things happen, it gets into the third point of making the call. Now, making the call, I mean, I'm picturing picking up a cell phone and making a call. Is that what we're talking about here, Jim, or are we talking about something else?
It is, but it's also a metaphor for everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the reason that I said making the call is because I keep having this situation happen where there was where people will want to connect with someone that you know. Maybe they want to present something to the office manager, for instance, where you work at or something, and they say, "Here's my number. Have them give me a call." Well, here's the thing. Number one, you're asking me to do something, and then you're asking somebody else to do something, right? To do something for you. You're the one that wants it, and so to me, you're kind of asking a lot. Number one, like, okay, that's the more things you ask, the more things you expect from other people, the less I think you're going to get. Here's the other thing too: is you're putting all the power into other people's hands. So if you're waiting on this office manager to call you, you're going to be waiting around. Why not just call that office manager yourself? Why not find out what their name is and you call it? And so, I got totally off base track there. I think I confused you there for a moment.
No, that's okay.
um, or people will say, I really want to, help. I noticed your friend is having this issue here. Have them give me a call. No, don't have them give you a call. You call them. If I know Chris knows John Maxwell, for instance, and I go, hey, Chris, have John give me a call, will you?
Yeah, sure, that's gonna happen.
So number one, I got to get Chris to talk to John, and then John to actually call me. So we got a couple of steps of where a no could happen. But if, he might be more inclined to go, hey, Chris, can I get John's email address? He might give me that, right? So, but then I contact him. So don't. But it's the same thing with everything else. Don't just sit around waiting for the job to come to you. You got to go get the job. Go after it. Be a hunter. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, and I think part of it boils down to, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think part of it boils down to sometimes they're afraid of rejection, so they're afraid of making the call. But in another, or I should say, however, in another aspect, they're afraid they're going to bother somebody, or they're afraid they're going to be a nuisance, or they're afraid to ask for things. And do you find, I guess let me ask you that question, do you find that, the clients you work with, do either of those two themes, the afraid of rejection, or the fear, being afraid of rejection, or the fear of being a nuisance, do either of those two play into why people don't make the call?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I suffer from the same thing. I sometimes don't want to call people because I'm afraid of rejection, or I don't want to be a nuisance also. But the thing is it is it more of a nuisance to actually make the call to somebody or to ask them to call you? Right?
Yeah,
You know, for something that they don't necessarily even want or don't know that they want.
yeah. Well, and the funny part is with the it's more of a nuisance, but then it alleviates that fear of rejection because if you're talking with somebody like you mentioned the John Maxwell comment, it's like if you ask me to have John call you, then if John says no, you're not getting rejected by John, I'm getting rejected by John,
Right? It's true.
and then I'm coming back and I'm not rejecting you, and you don't feel rejected because you're not getting that immediate no. It's kind of this roundabout, this roundabout way of going about things, and for whatever reason it feels softer to people. I mean, does that all make sense?
Actually, I love that too. That I hadn't even thought about that aspect. But yeah, you're not getting rejected. You're just getting a reporting of the facts. Then, right? And John said no, he's not going to call you.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, what will happen is in this triangle we're talking about, and this is what our brain, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, I think, what our brain expects. You ask me to have John call you. John says no. I'm not going to be nasty. I'm going to say, John probably won't be nasty. He'll say, well, if I can, I will. Then it's something where my translation back to you is, he'll try and he'll do his best, so you don't feel that immediate rejection. And by the time he doesn't call, then then you're not really feeling that rejection because you've kind of forgotten about it, or it's been put in the back of your mind and it's been softened. Does that make sense, or am I off base on that?
Oh, it does absolutely. And the thing is we all not well, I shouldn't say we all, but a lot of us we get that fear of failure. Really, is what it comes down to. We feel like we failed, and like I was just trying to explain to a comic the other day because he was talking about he's going to do his first open mic and he's afraid he's going to bomb. And I said, and he was looking for advice. I said, you probably will bomb. I mean, that's just I said, embrace it. That's the first 10 times you'll probably bomb. It's very few people that really are really, really funny their first few times on stage. It happens every once in a while, but it's a learning process. And the thing is, you didn't learn to walk just by walking. You had to fall down a bunch of times.
Yeah.
You don't remember that, but you did. And we want to be good at everything without having to fail. But I think that's how you get good at things. And believe me, I still struggle with this too. You get good at things by failing them.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's kind of funny you bring that up, but I remember the first event I put on, ended up having, I think, 3 ticket sales, lost my shirt, and it was a complete disaster. And everybody said, "Well, wouldn't you have rather had it be a success?" And I went, "No, I learned 100 things, that I've been able to implement since then to make every event more successful than that one. Financially, sure, I would have loved it to have been successful. However, it taught me so much about things not to do, about things to worry about, not to worry about. And in the end, I didn't die. In the end,
Nice.
nothing from that one event was so tragic that affected the rest of my life. And I moved on. And I think that's the biggest thing, and then I'm going to ask you what you want to leave the folks with. But from my perspective, thinking about this topic and talking about this topic, one of the things is you have to realize that your brain is wired to be in this life and death struggle all the time, and a lot of things that we look at, your brain translates into life and death, and you have to understand that if it's not life and death, then it's not life and death. And it's not
Exactly.
going to it's not going to kill you. It might hurt you. It might take a toll on you mentally. It might take a toll on you physically, and it might do something negative to you. But that's okay. You can come and you can achieve more because of it. Is that all? I mean, does that make sense, or did I go completely off base on that, Jim?
No, no, not at all. And I got to tell you, if you read anything about famous people, you get all these quotes from famous people that talk about failing, about persevering, about all this. They wouldn't write about it if it didn't happen. Most great people have failed dozens of times, and the only difference is they just kept getting up. And the thing I think that can really help a person to reframe, if you're wondering, well, how do I reframe the situation? Use this phrase. Something happens and you go, isn't it great that my car broke down, right? because then I had the opportunity to take the bus, and I got to see things I hadn't seen before, or whatever. And it may seem silly, and it's tough at first, believe me. And it doesn't. It's, grandma dies. It's going to be tough to reframe that in a positive way. But once you get in the habit of it, it becomes much easier. And the thing is you just don't get anywhere by dwelling on your failures. It won't help at all. Learn from them, yes, but it won't help to. You might as well reframe it and look at it in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is an epic place to end today's episode on. Jim, you've been an epic guest. Before we roll on out of here, I'm going to tell people how to get in contact with you. I just threw Jim's website up on the screen, and considering it's nice and long, I'm not going to read it because you're watching this. Actually, what the heck? In case you're listening to this, in case you downloaded this and are audio podcasting or something, it's Jim Kellner, hypnotist. That's JimKellnerHypnotist.com. Jim Keller, hypnotist.com, or text the word hypnosis to 33733, and you'll get signed up to Jim's newsletter and get a free hypnosis download called Unlimited Happiness. Jim, epic stuff you're doing, not only in the world of hypnosis, but in comedy and everything else you're doing. You're an epic guy. Before I kind of roll on out of here and say goodbye to our viewers for today, is there anything you want to leave our viewers with before we roll on out of here?
I thank everybody for watching, and I just want you to know you really are. I know it's hard to believe, but I think you really are mostly in control of where you are in your life. So if you're not happy where you are in your life, take responsibility for it and start taking some steps to change it.
Epic advice from an epic guy. You've got to get in touch with this guy. You've got to take him up on his free offer. You've got to reach out to him and see what he can do to help you. And folks, once again, until we meet again, make it an epic day.
To watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now. You'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.